You've been lied to about your wealth, not by a scammer, not by a con artist lurking in the shadows, by the very system that was supposed to protect you, by your mortgage statement, by your car's resale value, by that retirement account balance. You check every few months with a quiet sense of pride. You look at those numbers and you feel something. Security, progress, success. You think, I'm doing okay. I'm building something. But what if those numbers aren't telling you the whole story? What if the very assets you believe are building your future are actually masking a dangerous gap between what you think you're worth and what you actually own? There's a name for this. Economists and behavioral psychologists have studied it for decades. They call it the net worth illusion, and it is far more widespread, far more destructive, and far more invisible than most people will ever realize. Because the terrifying part isn't what it takes from you. It's what it makes you feel before it takes it. In the next 20 minutes, we're going to go deep. We're going to talk about why the three assets most Americans consider their financial foundation, their home, their car, and their 401k, are systematically inflating how wealthy they feel without actually making them wealthy. We're going to expose the hidden costs that never show up on your net worth calculator. We're going to look at the psychological mechanisms Wall Street and the real estate industry absolutely do not want you to understand. And we're going to reveal what real, liquid, compounding wealth actually looks like versus the performance of wealth that most people spend their entire lives chasing. One question before we go further. If you woke up tomorrow and needed $200,000 in cash within 30 days, not a loan, not a line of credit, just actual money, could you get it? Most people with a net worth of $300, $400, even $500,000 on paper cannot. And that gap between what's on paper and what's in reach is the illusion. That's what we're here to unpack. Let's start at the beginning. Because to understand how this illusion was built, you have to understand when it was sold. The post-World War II economic boom created something America had never seen before, a mass middle class with money to spend and land to buy. The GI Bill sent millions of veterans home with subsidized mortgages. Suburbs exploded. The American dream crystallized around a very specific image. A house with a yard, a car in the driveway, a job with a pension. And for a generation, that formula worked. Property values rose, pensions paid out. The system delivered what it promised. But then something shifted. The 1970s and 80s brought economic turbulence, inflation, and a fundamental restructuring of how retirement worked in America. The pension, a guaranteed, employer-funded monthly income for life, was quietly phased out and replaced with the 401k, a savings account dressed up to sound like a retirement plan. The shift seemed minor at the time. It was not minor. It transferred enormous financial risk from corporations to individual workers who had absolutely no training in managing it. And around the same time, real estate began its slow transformation from a place to live into an investment vehicle. Banks got more creative with lending, marketing got more sophisticated, and a cultural narrative was cemented into the American psyche. Your house is your most important asset. Your car reflects your status. Your 401k is your future. Together, these three things equal financial success. 50 years later, that narrative is still running, and it is costing people everything. Here is something most financial content will never tell you directly. Net worth, the way most people calculate it, is one of the most misleading metrics in personal finance. It sounds rigorous. It sounds official. Add up your assets, subtract your liabilities, and boom, that's your number. But the calculation hides more than it reveals, because it treats illiquid, speculative, cost-heavy assets the same way it treats cash in your brokerage account. And those things are not the same, not even close. Let's talk about the house first, because this is where the illusion is the most emotional, the most deeply ingrained, and frankly the most dangerous. You bought your home for $400,000, maybe $5. You put down 20%. You have a mortgage. You watch Zillow once a week, and you see that your home is now estimated at $550,000, $150,000 of gain. On paper, you feel rich. Of course you do. Who wouldn't? That's a significant number. But let's slow down and actually look at what that $150,000 means in practice. First, transaction costs. When you sell a home, the real estate agent commission alone is typically 5 to 6% of the sale price. On a $550,000 home, that's $27,000 to $33,000 gone before the closing table is cleared. Add in title fees, escrow fees, transfer taxes, attorney fees, and staging costs if you want competitive offers, and you are looking at an additional 2 to 4% easily. You have now lost close to $50,000 in friction costs before you've touched $1 of profit. Second, the cost of ownership you never fully account for. Property taxes on a $500,000 home in most U.S. states run between $4,000 and $12,000 per year depending on location. Maintenance and repairs average 1 to 2% of home value annually. That's $5,000 to $10,000 per year on a $500,000 property. Homeowners insurance, HOA fees in many neighborhoods, utility infrastructure, costs. Over a 10-year period, a homeowner easily spends $50,000 to $100,000 just keeping the house standing and compliant. Third, inflation adjustment. Real estate prices rise, yes, but they rise partly because everything rises. When you adjust nominal home price appreciation for inflation, the actual real return on residential real estate in the United States from 1890 to 2020 has averaged approximately 0.6% per year. That number comes from the research of Nobel Prize-winning economist Robert Shiller, not 6%, not 10%. Point 6. Your house is barely beating inflation in real terms over the long run. Now add in your mortgage interest. On a $400,000 30-year mortgage at a 6.5% interest rate, you will pay approximately $510,000 in total over the life of the loan. You borrowed $400,000. You repay over $900,000. The bank made more on your house than you did. So when you sit down and honestly calculate the true return on your home, accounting for transaction costs, maintenance, property taxes, mortgage interest, and inflation, in many cases the actual financial return is zero, sometimes negative. The house didn't build your wealth. It stored your spending. And yet, every year, millions of people count their home equity as the cornerstone of their net worth. They make financial decisions based on it. They feel financially secure because of it. They delay building other assets because they believe the house has it covered. That is the illusion, operating in real time. But this is where everything changes. Because the problem isn't just that the house returns less than you think. The problem is that believing the house is making you rich causes you to underinvest in assets that actually would. Research consistently shows that high home ownership rates correlate with lower wealth accumulation over time, not higher. The countries with the highest average wealth per capita, Switzerland, Sweden, Japan, have home ownership rates significantly below the United States. The relationship between owning your home and being wealthy is far more complicated than anyone in the real estate industry wants you to believe. If you're finding this useful and you want more videos that go this deep on financial psychology, consider subscribing to FinTrove. This channel is built for people who want the truth behind the numbers, not just the numbers themselves. Now let's talk about the car, because this is where people hemorrhage money with a smile on their face. The average new car in the United States in 2024 cost just over $48,000. The average monthly payment for a new car loan is now over $700. Americans collectively owe more than $1.6 trillion in auto loans. And still, the car is on the net worth sheet. Let's be precise about what a car actually is financially. The moment a new vehicle leaves the dealership lot, it loses approximately 9 to 11% of its value. In the first year, depreciation typically reaches 15 to 25%. By year 5, the average car has lost 40 to 60% of its purchase price. This is not an investment. It is not an asset in any meaningful financial sense. It is a depreciating consumer product. The only reason it appears on a net worth calculation is because it has a residual value greater than zero. But here is what makes the car illusion particularly insidious. The car is the most visible symbol of financial status in American culture. It sits in your driveway. Your neighbors see it. Your co-workers see it in the parking lot. Your brain registers the new car, the clean interior, the responsive acceleration, and it produces dopamine. It signals success. It makes you feel like you're winning. And the industry knows this. Car manufacturers and dealers are not selling transportation. They have not been selling transportation for decades. They are selling identity. They are selling the feeling of arrival. Every advertisement is engineered to associate the vehicle with aspiration, freedom, confidence, and desire. The financing department at the dealership is designed to get you focused on the monthly payment, not the total cost. Because once you agree to $700 a month, you stop thinking about the $48,000 price tag, the $4,000 in interest over the loan term, the $1,800 a year in insurance, the maintenance, costs that accelerate as the warranty expires. A person who buys a $48,000 car with a 5-year loan, insures it at average American rates, maintains it, and sells it 5 years later has typically spent close to $70,000 to $80,000 on a vehicle now worth around $20,000 to $22,000. They lost $50,000, and that vehicle appears on their net worth statement as an asset. The real cost isn't just the money, it's the opportunity cost. $50,000 invested in a diversified index fund with historical average returns of around 8 to 10% annually grows to somewhere between $80,000 and $130,000 over the same 10-year period. The car owner has spent $50,000 and has a $20,000 asset. The investor has $50,000 and has an $80,000 to $130,000 account. That gap compounds every decade. Over a working lifetime, the difference between being a status car buyer and a modest car buyer can easily exceed $1 million in accumulated wealth. But the illusion keeps most people from ever doing that math. The car feels like proof of success. So people keep buying, they keep financing, and their net worth statement keeps listing the car as though it means something, which brings us to the most psychologically complex piece of this puzzle. The 401k. This one requires real nuance because the 401k is not a scam. It is, under the right conditions, a genuinely powerful wealth-building tool. But the way most Americans understand and relate to their 401k balance is exactly the kind of thinking that creates the net worth illusion. Here's the dynamic. You log into your Fidelity or Vanguard account. You see $240,000, maybe $350, maybe $500. The number is right there in black and white, clear and definitive, and your brain reads it as money, as real, accessible, equivalent to cash money. Your net worth calculator adds it in full. You feel wealthy. You feel like the decades of contributions are paying off. But let's examine what that number actually is. It is not liquid. You cannot access it without penalty before age 59 and a half. If you withdraw it early, you face a 10% penalty plus ordinary income tax on every dollar, potentially losing 30 to 40 cents of every dollar in taxes and penalties depending on your bracket. It is not yours to spend freely. It is locked in a system with specific rules, specific access requirements, and specific tax consequences attached to every dollar. And the tax piece is the part that almost nobody fully internalizes. A traditional 401k is funded with pre-tax dollars. That means the government has a claim on every dollar in that account. When you withdraw $500,000 from your 401k in retirement, you will pay income tax on it. In many cases, factoring in state taxes, that $500,000 balance is actually worth closer to $350,000 to $375,000 in real purchasing power. A full 25 to 30% of the balance that shows on your statement does not belong to you. It belongs to the IRS. It always has. It always will. And yet the full pre-tax number sits there in your net worth calculation as though it's yours. Furthermore, consider the fees. The average 401k plan charges between 0.5 and 2% in total annual fees, administration fees, fund expense ratios, advisory fees, record-keeping fees. These sound small. They are not small. A 1% fee on a $400,000 account is $4,000 per year. Compounded over 30 years, fees in the range of 1% reduce your final balance by approximately 25% compared to a zero-fee alternative. On a projected $1 million retirement balance, 1% annual fees cost you approximately $250,000 over 30 years. The fees are invisible. They are deducted silently. They never appear as a line item on your statement, and they are extraordinarily effective at making your wealth feel larger than it is. Then there is sequence of returns risk. You have $500,000 in your 401k and you retire. In your first 2 years of retirement, the market drops 30%. Your account is now $350,000. You are withdrawing 4% annually to live. That's $14,000 on the reduced balance, which accelerates the depletion. The mathematical damage done by a bad sequence of returns in the years immediately surrounding retirement can be catastrophic and irreversible in ways that are genuinely difficult to recover from. The balance on your statement, the day you retire, is not the balance you will live on. The sequence of what happens after matters enormously. But the number on the screen doesn't tell you that. So we have a house that returns far less than most people believe, carries enormous hidden costs, and ties up capital in an illiquid, expensive-to-exit asset. We have a car that depreciates continuously, drains money in maintenance, insurance, and financing costs, and represents pure consumer spending dressed up as net worth. And we have a 401k that carries a significant tax liability embedded in every dollar, charges perpetual fees that compound invisibly, and carries liquidity and sequence of returns risks that the balance number completely obscures. Put these three things together and you have the scaffolding of financial illusion. You have a system that allows, actually encourages, people to feel wealthy before they are. A system that makes people comfortable enough with their perceived financial position that they underinvest in liquid, accessible, truly compounding assets. A system that keeps people working, spending, borrowing, and staying in their lane. And here is the psychological mechanism underneath all of it. Behavioral economists call it the endowment effect. The moment you own something, your brain assigns it greater value than it actually has in the market. You bought your house, therefore it is precious. You drive your car, therefore it is worth what it feels like it's worth. You watch your 401k balance grow, therefore it is real, secure, and yours. The endowment effect is not a weakness. It is a feature of human cognition. But it is ruthlessly exploited by industries that profit from your attachment to these assets. There is also something deeper happening with specifically these three assets. They are all tied to core human psychological needs. The house satisfies the need for safety, belonging, and permanence. The car satisfies status, autonomy, and identity. The retirement account satisfies the need for security about the future. These aren't frivolous wants. They are fundamental human drives. And when an asset class can tap into a fundamental psychological drive, It can command a premium far beyond its rational financial value, and it can make people deeply resistant to examining whether the asset is actually doing what they believe. Think about the last time someone told you your house wasn't as great an investment as you thought. Did it feel like financial advice, or did it feel like a personal attack? Most people feel the latter. Because the house isn't just an asset, it's a home, its memories, its identity. The financial critique hits something deeper than finance. And that emotional armor makes the illusion extraordinarily hard to see through, let alone dismantle. So what does real wealth actually look like? What is the alternative to the net worth illusion? The answer is uncomfortable for a culture built around the three pillars we just discussed. Real wealth, the kind that provides genuine security, genuine freedom, and genuine optionality, is liquid, accessible, income-generating, and truly owned. It does not require your daily presence to maintain. It does not charge you interest while it sits there. It does not have a hidden tax bill embedded in the balance. It does not depreciate the moment you attach yourself to it. Real wealth is cash, bonds, dividend-producing equities, index funds in taxable brokerage accounts, income-generating real estate structured as a business rather than a primary residence. And yes, a Roth IRA or Roth 401k where the tax has already been paid and the account truly belongs to you. The distinction between a taxable brokerage account and a 401k sounds minor. It is not minor. A taxable brokerage account gives you full, immediate access to your money at any time. You can withdraw tomorrow without penalty. You can use it as collateral. You can use capital gains strategies to minimize taxes on growth. It is flexible, responsive, and liquid in ways that a traditional retirement account is not. Financial advisors often underemphasize the brokerage account because they earn commissions and management fees on retirement accounts. The structure of the advice industry itself has a financial incentive to keep you focused on the locked-up number rather than the accessible one. Similarly, the distinction between a primary residence and a rental property is the difference between a cost center and an income stream. Your primary residence costs you money every month: mortgage, taxes, maintenance, insurance. A rental property, structured correctly, generates cash flow that compounds over time and builds real equity through someone else's payment. The same real estate can be either an illusion or an asset, depending entirely on which side of the transaction you're on. This is where we have to talk about a concept that separates people who build real wealth from people who spend their lives feeling like they're building it. The concept is financial independence versus financial performance. Financial performance is about looking wealthy: the house, the car, the impressive retirement balance number. Financial independence is about generating enough passive income from truly owned assets to cover your living expenses without requiring your labor. These are not the same destination, and the road to one often actively prevents you from reaching the other. The research on this is striking. A 2023 study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that among Americans who self-reported as financially comfortable and had net worths above $500,000, fewer than 40% had liquid assets outside of retirement accounts sufficient to cover 6 months of their current living expenses. More than 60% of people who felt wealthy were, in practice, one job loss, one health crisis, or one major market downturn away from financial distress. The net worth number had given them confidence. The liquid wealth underneath hadn't kept pace. This is the climax of the illusion. You feel wealthy enough to stop being afraid. You feel wealthy enough to relax your urgency. You look at the number, and it tells you that you're okay. But when the actual test comes, when you need money that is real, accessible, and truly yours, the number doesn't show up. The house doesn't liquidate in 30 days. The car sells for a fraction of what you listed it for. The 401k withdrawal triggers taxes and penalties that take a third of it. And suddenly, the $300,000 net worth you had on paper is, in practice, something closer to $90,000 in actually accessible penalty-free capital. That gap, that difference between the number you believe and the number that shows up when you need it. That is the net worth illusion. And it doesn't just affect poor financial decisions, it affects life decisions. It affects when people feel safe quitting a job they hate. It affects when people feel they can afford to take a risk on a business. It affects whether someone feels financially free or financially trapped. The illusion doesn't just distort the balance sheet, it distorts the life. So what do you do with this? The first shift is simple but radical. Recalculate your net worth with brutal honesty. Deduct the true transaction costs from your home's estimated value. List your car not at Kelley Blue Book, but at what you'd net after taxes and hassle if you sold it in the next 30 days. Apply a 25% haircut to your traditional 401k balance to account for the embedded tax liability. Now look at what's left. That is closer to your real number. For most people, this exercise produces a number meaningfully lower than what they had been believing. That shock is not a reason to despair. It is information. And information, however uncomfortable, is the only thing that can actually change a trajectory. The second shift is about allocation. Start moving toward liquidity. Build a taxable brokerage account alongside your retirement savings. Not instead of, alongside. $1 in an index fund in a brokerage account is worth more in terms of flexibility and genuine security than $1 in a traditional 401k, even if the growth potential is similar. Prioritize accumulating assets you can actually access. The third shift is about the car. This one is the fastest lever most people have. The next vehicle you buy should be 2 years old, already past its sharpest depreciation cliff, and purchased for cash or with the shortest possible loan term. The difference in monthly cash flow freed up can be redirected immediately into liquid assets. The compounding effect on that redirection, sustained for a decade, is genuinely life-changing. The fourth shift is the hardest. It's about identity. The net worth illusion persists not just because of math, but because of meaning. Because the house, the car, and the retirement account are tied to how you see yourself and how others see you. Untangling your sense of success from those symbols is psychological work. Real wealth, the spreadsheet kind, the kind that buys you freedom rather than appearances, is often completely invisible. The person driving a 12-year-old Toyota and living in a modest home who has $800,000 in liquid invested assets and no debt does not look wealthy. They are. The person in the gleaming new car parked in front of a 5-bedroom house with a high 401k balance and $40,000 in credit card debt looks wealthy. They are performing wealth. Those are not the same person. And the system around you is constantly, relentlessly trying to convince you that the performance is the goal. We started this with a question. If you needed $200,000 in cash within 30 days, could you get it? Most people who believe themselves financially stable cannot answer yes. And that inability is not a personal failure. It is the direct result of a system that channeled your financial energy into illiquid, cost-heavy, psychologically satisfying assets while calling it wealth building. The net worth illusion is not an accident. It is the product of 50 years of carefully constructed financial culture. Mortgages sold as investments, cars sold as identity, retirement accounts sold as security. And the people who designed those products made extraordinarily good money off the design. Your job, if you want to actually build wealth rather than feel like you're building it, is to see through the construction, to do the uncomfortable math, to rebuild your financial identity around liquidity, access, and real compounding rather than the number on the screen that makes you feel okay. The number that should matter isn't your net worth. It is your financial independence number. The amount of liquid, income-generating, accessible assets you need to cover your life without selling your labor. When that number is sufficient, you are free. When it isn't, you aren't, regardless of what your net worth calculator says. Most people will never look at their financial life this way. Most people will keep feeling wealthy on paper while living without real options. But you just sat here for 20 minutes and actually looked at it. That already puts you in a different category. If this video changed how you see your finances, subscribe to FinTrove. Every week this channel goes deeper into the financial psychology, the hidden mechanics, and the real numbers behind wealth, not the performance of it. And the next video goes even further into the psychology of how financial identity keeps people broke. You don't want to miss it. The house, the car, the 401k, they were supposed to be the foundation. Make sure they actually are.